Bienvenue à les Affaires Brassicoles, votre balado sur l'entrepreneuriat brassicole du Québec, avec Leonardo Calcagno de Baron Mag.
Bonjour tout le monde, ici Leonardo Calcagno des Affaires Brassicoles. J'espère que vous allez bien et que vous sortez, vous allez boire, manger, que ce se passe du milieu du Québec. Et si vous êtes ailleurs, s'il vous plaît, envoyez-nous des photos pour qu'on soit jaloux. On a envie de voir ça. Comme vous savez, Baron Mag est en tournée un peu partout au Québec. Si vous allez dans les festivals, on est là. On essaie vraiment d'aller en région cette année, moins Montréal, puis on veut voir ce qui se passe. Puis on a été vraiment bien contents de voir à chaque fois le monde nous accueille vraiment bien. On a eu plein de bières, puis on sort de là tout le temps bien content de voir ça. So, si vous avez des questions, envoyez-moi un courriel à leonardo@baronmac.com. Puis bien sûr, abonnez-vous à notre infolette. Ce podcast est commandité par KEG Management. Si vous avez besoin de canage mobile, KEG Management. Si vous avez besoin de KEG, bien sûr, contactez KEG Management pour que ce soit du KEG à location short term ou à long terme. Aujourd'hui, on fait un numéro spécial. Comme vous savez, Baron Mag, si vous avez un peu en ligne, on est commanditaire puis partenaire de la Canada Cup 2025 qui va se passer au Congrès de l'AMBQ cette année. Puis, nous, ce qu'on voulait faire, c'est vraiment parler avec tout le monde, les juges qui nous ont répondu, bien sûr. So, on va voir quelques juges qui vont parler avec nous autres par podcast, puis bien sûr par courriel. Puis, beaucoup des entrevues vont en anglais, so, s'il y a quelque chose, on va essayer de les réécrire pour que vous pouvez les lire si vous ne pouvez pas comprendre. Mais nos entrevues, ça va être vraiment avec du monde qui vont juger là-bas. Puis notre but, nous autres, comprendre un petit peu comment tu juges une bière. C'est quoi les étapes et tout ça? Comment tu peux comprendre ça? Aujourd'hui, on parle avec la gang de Christoffer Tuominen. Je pense que j'ai bien dit ça, son nom. C'est un juge qui va juger des bières aussi pour la Canadian Cup. Puis bien sûr, c'est un Finlandais qui depuis des années ici, puis là, il travaille dans la microbrasserie depuis des années. Il a été brasseur à travers, partout dans le monde. Puis bien sûr, on voulait parler avec lui de comment on travaille là-dessus. So, hey Christoffer, how are you?
Not too bad. I'm doing good. How are you?
Fine. I hope that I did not destroy your family name. I hope it was good. And thank you again for this morning.
It was perfect.
It was good. All right, man. So thank you very much for taking your time this morning, to talk about the Canada Cup and stuff like that. But before we start talking about the Canada Cup and how to judge a beer, because that's also always been my a question I always have, that how can you judge a beer when you guys get like hundreds of beers to taste? Can you give us your background? Because I went to your site. I did you work for tons of great breweries in the UK, stuff like that. So how long you been doing that, and also here in Canada, sir? How long you been doing that? Can you give us a little bit about your pedigree?
I've been a professional brewer for 11 years now.
Okay.
I went to culinary and restaurant management course in university in Finland. So my background is in gastronomy and fine dining. Got super into home brewing at some point, and then after university, I moved back to work for a very exciting restaurant project in my hometown. And after a while, I got bored of living in my small hometown again, so I decided it was time to go somewhere else. And I applied for, I don't know, probably hundreds of breweries in England to make, and got a response from Beavertown. Started there when no one knew what Beavertown was. They just moved to Tottenham. We had, I think, 4 fermenters, and they just got in the canning line. So I started working on the canning line and packing boxes. By the time I left, we had taken over 3 buildings in the industrial estate, and I think we had, 12 or 15 fermenters and an equal amount of brights, and a canning line that could do 12,000 cans an hour, and a full barrel aging and a wild facility as well. And I think about 6 months after I left, they built the brewery started building the brewery at the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and then the Heineken buyout happened, which was pretty wild. And
it was a wild year
after that. Yeah, After that, I went to work at in Canada in London, specializing in doing German style lager beer, mainly Helles. I wanted to do that because up until that point, professionally, I'd only worked with hoppy beers and sour beers. So I really wanted to learn how to make lager properly. And I had a friend who was the lead brewer, and they were scaling up their operation, and they needed someone with experience to come and help brew house while they were building the bigger brewery outside of town. So I did that. I was planning to stay there much longer until one of my friends, Justin, who we'd worked with previously on a few sort of tasting events and meet the brewer events before, called me and said, "Hey, I'm consulting with this guy, and they want to build a sort of a brew pub in Cross. They have an existing older brewery outside of London to do some volume. Would you mind to like come over for a beer and just have a look at some drawings and see if it makes sense to set up a brewery this way?" So I did that, and that then ended up getting a job offer of taking on that whole project, which was super fun. We tried to do things a little bit differently than most craft breweries in England at that time. We started off by opening the brewery in King's Cross with a 10 hectoliter semi-automatic brew house with just four fermenters. But instead of a normal tap room, we built a tap room and a music venue. The brewery was situated in an area with loads of creative industry and mainly music studios and animation studios. That also got really popular and expanded, I think, way quicker than any of us had realized. Kind of same thing happened as the Beaver Town. Started with 4 fermenters, finished with 12, and beer in some of the supermarket chains in the UK. We were contract brewing batches in Belgium and in other parts of England to keep up with demand. So we started with a small dream of making 2,000 liters of beer a week, and we ended up with brewing double brews 5 days a week.
So whatever you go, you always take your brewery and you like grow it very hard. That's pretty much what that's what you tell me right now.
It seems to go that way. I think it might just be
well, you're gonna get a job anywhere, man. If you come with that resume, I think there's a lot of brewers that want you right now, man.
I hope so, because I need a job too. So I wish. Yeah, and then sort of Brexit happened, and it was sort of on a social level quite I would say like a brutal experience. A lot of my friends in London were expats, and people started moving and leaving the city. And then at some point we were like, okay, there's not that many people left, and the ones who are left also have plans of going somewhere else. And I had quite a few friends that moved to Toronto, and people kept saying, "Oh, you should come visit." And I was like, "Oh, like come visit? That seems like a waste of time." And then I was sort of convinced that like Toronto looks like a cool enough place to just go and live without having ever been in Canada. So I did what I did when I was trying to get a job at brewing in the first place. I just sent out loads of resumes and letters and just hoped that someone would catch the hook. Got a call from Jason and Jeff at Indie Ale House in Toronto saying that, hey, actually perfect timing. We have a guy who is moving moving back home, and we have a job to fill, and your profile kind of fits it perfectly. Like, if you would be interested, we can sponsor your immigration and match your salary. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And like, the big hook then was also, as always, like wanting to learn something new in the process. And they had a huge barrel aging and fooder program, which I was very excited to work with. And before the last sort of year and a half that I was there, I was in charge of the barrel aging and the blending and the fooder lagers, which was super fun. Learned loads, but then sadly, as things go in this modern world, because of economic pressures and the whole cost of living thing, they weren't able to renew the lease at the production facility, so that sadly closed down, and myself and a few others lost their job at that time. Yeah, and since then I've been mainly doing some project work and some consulting. I've been I'm a partner in a small brewery back home in Finland, in my hometown, so I've been able to spend more time with the guys, sort of doing strategy planning and planning recipes and seeing how we can make our tap room even busier than it is.
Nice, man.
And that's basically the journey.
Yeah, so that's it. Like I was saying in the beginning, you have like a whole very big, like you've been in the brewery for a long time, and that wasn't the reason. I think a lot of people are asking me, as a judge of Canada Cup, and I think I know why they got you, man. You have like a big resume about that. But tell me, how does it work to judge beer in Canada Cup? How does it work? Because you have your own perception of what is a good beer. You have a perception. You work with fermentation. You do a lot of stuff like that. And as a judge, how many beers are you drinking? How many beers are you tasting?
Oh, it depends on the day. If it's like big competitions like this, I would say at the Canadian Beer Awards, I think I did 40 to 50 beers per day.
Okay.
But obviously, you're not drinking full beers. It's
well, I hope not.
It's sips, and you have way more water than you have beer. For me, I did sort of a beer evaluation course with the Institute of Brewers and Distillers in London when I was working at Beavertown, and some off flavor training with Aroxa and Beer Lab in the UK as well. And then through that, Beavertown had this employee development program. So they basically set aside money every year for the staff to sign up to courses that could sort of further their beer knowledge or professional growth. And I 1 year decided that I wanted to do the BJCP, the beer judging course and certification. So I kind of live by those BJCP principles of it's ultimately, when judging a beer, it's not about my preference, but more about how true is it to the style that it is competing for, and how does it compare to the other beers that are entered in the competition in the same category. So I always try to sort of, I mean, in all big competitions, you don't know what the beer is that you're drinking. Everything is served blind. But even then, I try to not guess, like, oh, maybe this is this beer because it tastes like that. I just try to stick to the style guideline, and then I look for things that are done technically well. Is the fermentation profile clean? How's the head retention? Is the carbonation appropriate for the type of beer that we're judging? If it's a pilsner, is it hoppy enough to be a pilsner? Is it dry enough to fit the sort of the framework of what a pilsner should be like? So that's kind of my approach.
But how do you, because like I like dark beer and I like lagers, and when you taste other beers, like I don't like red beer or red ale, stuff like that. So how do you make sure that you make sure that you don't judge with your own your own taste of beer that you like with the other stuff? How does it work, man? Because for me it's a mystery. I was once in a competition, man, and I was like, I could never do stuff like that. I went to a coffee competition and I couldn't do that, because for me it's like, I know what I like and I know how to, and I judge because of my taste buds. So how do you besides the water drinking and stuff like that, how does it work for you guys?
So a lot of big competitions, when you sort of sign up or get approached, they usually have like a preference sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, like with everything, if you want the person who's best suited to judge a category to judge that category, so a lot of like head judges or competition organizers will ask, as soon as they make contact, or at the point where you apply to be a judge for that competition, is there any styles that you feel you're better at judging? And are there some styles that you don't like to do, and that can be like down to personal preference? So you have a little bit of sort of choice. Easier to do, obviously, with a bigger competition, because you also want to make sure that you have professional and capable judges in every category too, right?
Yeah.
But for example, if you get if you invite brewers who are highly specialized in, say, making saison, then it's only logical that you would ask them to judge the saison category as well, because they would have the sort of technical expertise to handle that as well.
And what is your specialty on beer?
I like to do, when judging, I like to judge things that I also like to brew. So I like to judge the lager categories, because it's a good, from the perspective of the brewer who's also a judge, it's also a good opportunity to learn while you're tasting these beers blind. So I feel like in every competition you find like a beer and you have it and you think, oh, that was cool, wonder how they did that, and then you can go like down this rabbit hole of like trying to figure out what it was, and then it's super cool, like especially afterwards, once all the winners are announced, and if it happens to be that beer, then you can obviously try to get in touch with that brewer and say, hey man, I really liked what you did with that beer, but how did you do it? And it's just a great way to sort of find out about new techniques. And then there's like, every competition also has like the fun category, that's where everything gets entered that doesn't really fit into anything.
Like cereal beer?
Yeah, like all the weird stuff. And that's usually my favorite, because you get to try like some really out there stuff. I think at the last competition we judged, we had I think the category was just called Weird and Wonderful. And it was sort of anything that didn't fit in with like style guidelines, or would have been like unfair to compete in any other category. And there was some insane stuff. I think there was a black IPA that was brewed with mint.
Like an after 8 beer.
Yeah, there was a West Coast IPA with spruce tips and wintergreen that was insanely good. There was a lot of cannabis terpene beers, which I think is super cool. It's super cool when you see stuff like like cannabis terpenes and thiolized yeasts getting used in other things that aren't IPAs, because you get a different expression. So I really enjoyed also, like, I enjoy doing the classic styles, and then I enjoy doing the super weird ones.
Okay. My last question: how's the industry in Finland, the brewery right now? They're having the same problem as here, like with the breweries closing down, stuff like that. I don't know much about that. I know more about Holland, but I don't know much about the Finnish, the industry. How is it right now up there?
We've had a few breweries close. Not as much as I think anyone in the industry expected. There's sort of, it's been bubbling under in Finland already for like the last 10 or so years. There's a huge trend of eating and drinking local.
Okay.
So a lot of the small breweries are actually doing really well, as there's more sort of like domestic tourism. People are more interested in.
That's pretty much Canadians. Canadians are like that,
Yeah. So I don't feel like the effects of like sort of have been as brutal. There's been a few breweries that managed to expand and get some international recognition in Europe, which I think is super cool. But the whole sort of craft beer scene in Finland is very new.
Okay.
When I left in 2014, like, I think you could count the craft breweries on your hands. I think it was less than 10. Now there's way more, and it's booming, and people are interested. There's some of the breweries that have been around for a longer time that maybe expanded at the wrong time, that have some troubles, but I think most of them have managed to sort of correct the ship. What we do with our brewery is we try to stay very relevant to being local. We're in an old medieval town. We're right at the gates of the old town, and ever since we started the brewery, we said that if people want to have our beer, they have to come to our town.
It's the only way to go.
And we've kind of stuck with that. We make some exceptions for like some of the better beer places in Helsinki. We try to, if they ask for any of our special releases, obviously we'll sell them some kegs, but we're not sort of actively looking for
expansion or like that.
No. We've expanded a little bit in the space that we have, just to sort of streamline production, and last summer we opened the tap room, and it's been a huge hit. We've already got like a good stable of sort of regular customers, because at the end of the day, we want it to be sort of a brewery for the locals, but that tourists can enjoy as well.
What is the name of the brewery?
Vanhan Porvoon Panimo.
Okay, you have to send it send me by email so I can write it down. Well, Christoffer, thank you very much for your time, man. Like I said, I can't wait for you to judge. I will get in contact with you after the judging to see if your beer won. I'd like to know if you're a beer, if you're the one who put the crown on people, stuff like that. So it's good to know. Of course, if people want to talk to Christoffer, we're going to put the information on our podcast, and hope to see you in Quebec.
Absolutely, see you in Quebec. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde de nous avoir écoutés, les Affaires Brassicoles. Comme vous savez, le Canada Cup s'en vient à l'AMBQ. Vous allez là-bas, vous pouvez voter, envoyer vos bières, tout ça. C'est une belle journée de boissons, tout ça. Découvrir tout ce qui se passe à travers le Canada. Si vous avez des questions, leonardo@baromag.com. Et bien sûr, ce podcast est commandité par KEG Management. Si vous voulez louer des kegs à short term, à long term, KEG Management. Si vous avez besoin de canettes, Can Management. Merci beaucoup et à la prochaine.